Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. It's been an incredible day so far, but we're just getting started. This next panel is a spotlight because our guest is so important. We don't want him on a panel. We want him a focus on him. And the Q&A for this is going to be led by my old friend, Jason Smolanoff from Kroll, Senior Managing Director, Global Cyber Risk Practice Leader at Kroll, where he's led Kroll to incredible growth. He has over 650 professionals working for him in 18 different countries. What makes Jason a cyber expert is not just that he's got the frontline technical skills and upper level management skills to execute on engagements, from security science to digital forensics, to incident response, to remediation, to notification. He will handle that entire universe. But it's also during his time at the FBI, and Jason is a very, very famous, well-known former FBI agent. He led some of the most significant cybersecurity investigations in history. He even served in Afghanistan in the FBI's major crimes task force in Kabul, in Afghanistan, doing global intel work and undercover operations. And unlike any other IR expert here today, or perhaps on the planet, Jason is also a rocket scientist. That means he's actually earned 2 patents for real. He's got a master's in chemical physics, which he used to help facilitate the manufacture of cutting-edge computer chip technology for clients like IBM, Intel, Motorola, Sony, and lots of others. Jason is Michael Jordan meets Michael Phelps, except growing older has made Jason only better in his field. So welcome, Jason.
Thank you, John. You always make me blush.
And we had to get, well, Jason, you know what? In order to have somebody, we had to get a bigger hero than you. And in this spotlight, that's who we got, because Joe Flores is not only helping run the part of the Department of Homeland Security that protects the 16 infrastructures of the United States. He also happens to have been a member of the Air National Guard, serving in both the National Capital Region and in New England, and has held previous positions as cybersecurity technician and as a cyber warfare operator, currently with the 102nd Cyber Warfare Squadron in Rhode Island. To top it all off, Joe has also trained diplomatic security special agents and contractors and supported the United Nations General Assembly in New York as coordinator for military special operations teams, and even worked as an active duty Air Force bomb technician and was stationed around the world in places like South Korea, Germany, and the Middle East. It's just incredible. Whether the bomb is cyber or C4, Joe has got your back. He's probably, to me, thank you for your service, Joe. Thanks for protecting us right now. It's incredible to have people like you in government watching our back. We welcome you today and look forward to this spotlight. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, John.
Awesome. Thanks so much, John. Really appreciate the introductions. I think that's the one reason for all of you who know about every single year that I've done the IR forum, my cat Artemis has decided to join us today. So a true Hollywood cat only shows up when the camera's on. So
it's
Joe,
a good omen.
This is Artemis.
It's a good omen, Jason.
It is. So hey, Joe, thank you so much for being here, and John, thanks for the introductions. Joe, I think for the group, maybe what it would be great to start with is really like, what is CISA's mission? What is CISA, and how does CISA really help the public?
Right. So great lead question. Little bit highlight the agency. So CISA is the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency. So we like to say we love security so much we have it twice in our name, to include being under the umbrella of Department of Homeland Security. We are the agency that was stood up. Formerly, it was called NPPD, which was an acronym a lot of people didn't understand. It was that way since around 2005 at the DHS got stood up. It was an amalgamation of programs that had to do with emergency communications, physical security, we call it infrastructure security, and cyber. The cybersecurity division has been around a long time. We had the NKIC, I think a lot of people remember that, which is where a lot of the information flowed in before CISA started. I was a pretty early hire. We started the regional office process. I work out of New England region. We have 10 regions. We sort of map to FEMA. And I work out of Boston, which the regional office is. And again, we covered those 3 program wings: emergency communications, infrastructure security, which is a lot of physical security and understanding dependencies to organizations. And then obviously the big one, cybersecurity. We also have regional office personnel that do a lot of analyticals, training and exercise folks, operations folks that run things like operations, like we have the big marathon up here. So we're actually a key player in that with the other federal agencies, the FBI, and the state agencies as well. So we're sort of the easiest way to describe us. We're sort of the link to the federal agencies, the state agencies, which is a big part of my job, helping the state through cyber preparation and understanding sort of the left of boom strategies, including incident management. We work a lot there too, but also mostly the private sector. And so it's important to understand in critical infrastructure that a huge percentage of actual critical infrastructure, the 16 sectors that encompass that, are mostly run by the private sector. So if you take a really top-down governmental federal approach, sort of a ham-handed approach to like dealing with the private sector, it doesn't work. So everyone in charge of DHS was smart enough to figure out they need an agency like this. We had Chris Krebs, our initial director, who was excellent the first few years, and now we have Jen Easterly, the current director, who's really taken us forward in an incredible way over the last few years to create things like the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative and other things that are sort of helping us make that that transition and that that face-to-face interaction with the private sector.
Yeah, it's really helpful to understand. I mean, I think that's something that was actually very needed, was basically a liaison between the federal government and the private sector to start understanding what's going on. I think from an aggregating and looking at it from a 60,000 foot view, but also to provide information and support to the private sector in defending not only critical infrastructure, but all infrastructure that's within the United States and around the world. So, I know that CISA's mission it's a critical mission in my mind, and absolutely necessary. And as you touched on, I think it really requires strong partnership with the private sector, and particularly vendors who I know that your new boss, Jen Easterly, is really pushing a concept called security by design strategy. Can you kind of maybe describe what that strategy is and how CISA is trying to encourage vendors and people in the public sector to implement it?
Right. Yeah. Out here in the field where we're at, I'm actually on my position, I'm a cybersecurity advisor. So we have advisors in the field that do physical emergency communications and cyber. So we're generally state or district oriented. So I'm in Massachusetts, work out of Boston. I generally cover the state. There's actually two of us here. And one of our roles is to be an advocate for a lot of the larger pushes that are coming down from headquarters. The security by design, which is again from Director Easterly, is trying to shift the weight of the resources and the risk over to the large companies that essentially run the world from a cybersecurity perspective and an IT perspective, to easy concepts like let's not have all of the mitigations fall on the small organizations that are getting overwhelmed by the APT Act. We'll talk through threat in a minute. The advanced persistent threat actors that are out there, the China, the Russias, those, and then the big ransomware groups. And let's release software that's not buggy and doesn't need to be patched immediately and all the time, and have all sorts of issues from a vulnerability perspective. So it's sort of shifting the issue left to the organizations that have the resources to fix it. So it's really a mindset shift nationally, potentially probably internationally, because a lot of these companies are woven together internationally, and get everybody to kind of change the way we fight this fight. Essentially, is how this is working.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. How is it being received? Are you finding that it's being received positively, or are you getting resistance or pushback from anyone? And if so, who?
Yeah, from my perspective out in the field, we're like the face-to-face with actual entities, right? So we advocate for this, but really what happens is a lot of this is happening at headquarters. So another entity that Jen Easterly put together was the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative, like I mentioned earlier. That is a private public collaboration cell where people get either asked to join it or they volunteer to join it. A lot of the biggest companies in the world are on this, right? There's people just getting, I think I just saw Huntress, the EDR endpoint small
Mm-hmm.
business company just joined it a few days ago. I saw on LinkedIn. So people are coming in all the time, and it's fostering collaboration at the Fed, state, and private sector level that's never been seen before, because it's breaking down the barriers of trying to hide behind,
Mm-hmm.
your vulnerabilities. And I know the SEC rule is kind of like changing the game a little bit. A lot of things happening out there in the world legally from a reporting perspective. But we were a
Yeah.
couple years ahead of this, where you sign agreements and you make everybody comfortable to sort of share intelligence and the issues at hand across this collaborative. And I think from that perspective, we're seeing some gains. There's actually people signing letters of support to do the secure by design strategies, some really large companies. And so it's sort of a wave, right? It's building. And I think that's the whole point.
That's great. No, look, I think it's a fantastic initiative. I think it's going to be super helpful, and I think it's the only way for us to really truly protect all the private sector and
Right.
leverage the resources appropriately from the federal government, because I know that they're limited. Most people are seeing ransomware here as a major threat. We've seen a surge of ransomware kind of after a lull in 2022. We've seen, and the lull is relative, and we're seeing a surge in 2023. I'm pretty sure I know what your position is on this, but it might be nice for you to just state it. But like, what's CISA's position on ransomware and ransomware payments?
Yeah, ransomware. So the federal position on ransomware payments is you shouldn't pay. And a lot of states have that as well. We can't compel people not to pay, but there's a lot of really good data out there and reasons not to pay. Now, I preface this whole conversation with, I get it. Most federal folks understand why people pay. If you don't have all of the mitigations and resilience pieces in place in your cyber program, it's really difficult to not pay when somebody encrypts all your data, and you literally don't have an operation anymore. You don't have a business anymore. So I get it. I get why. But the key, I think, is to shift everything left, as we always say, and talk about the things you should have in place, having data backup and, understanding an incident response, and all these things you need to have before this happens. And that's what we help with. So that's one of CISA's key goals here, is to get everybody to think left a little bit, put all these things in place so you don't have to pay. But reasons not to pay. So several of them, right? Statistics are 92% of the companies who pay don't get their data back. Not all of their data, right? So there might be critical pieces of that data you don't get back, even though you pay them. It encourages more attacks, right? I think it funds their operations. So if you think of it from a national defense perspective, you're literally funding the bad guys for future operations against yourself, because a lot of times they'll come back to the same vulnerabilities in the same companies again. And then other ransomware groups see that on the news and they know you're vulnerable, so they come at you as well. Sanctions could be involved. That's a big one on the legal sphere, because you have 15% of the attacks coming from sanctioned entities, and you don't know who those entities are until later. So you pay the ransomware and then you end up on a sanctioned entity list, and that's never a good thing. Like I talked about earlier, 80% of the entities are getting hit again at a later time because they didn't close the holes. Hackers increase the demands in 1 in 3 victims. So you have that increase in demand, that pressure point piece. And then in the end, cyber insurance rates go up and all of that. So that's when you do pay. So again, I think trying not to pay is a better option in all cases.
It's when I was in government, the hard line was do not pay. But now being out in the private sector, I clearly see there's a variety of reasons in which a company may want to pay or may have to pay, right, to kind of move forward. So, I know we're getting close to our time. I can't believe how fast this goes, but can you quickly describe the PRNI, it's the Pre-Ransomware Notification Initiative, and also the ransomware vulnerability program that is provided by CISA?
Yeah, so it's 2 different programs. One is in writing. in our language that came down from Congress. It's an actual program. The other one is sort of invented internally. But the ransomware vulnerability warning program, that's the actual title of it, is the codified one. That's where, with our scanning that we're doing for lots of entities across, private, public, this is like our CISA scans using Nessus scanners and Census, which is web application. For finding vulnerabilities, they're coming to me because it's in Massachusetts, and we'll know the entity's name, and we'll warn them essentially that they have a vulnerability on the open internet to try to close it before the bad thing happens. The other thing we're doing is we're doing Shodan scans, which is essentially the indexing program that scans the internet every several minutes and collects all sorts of vulnerabilities, not just on IT, but also IoT, Internet of Things, and operational technology components. You might operate a manufacturing facility and have a programmable logic controller sitting out on an internet. I've actually done a few of those, to be honest. And that's a terrible thing to have, because that directly lets hackers go directly into your operational control environment. And a lot of them have default passwords on. We just saw that with the water attacks a few weeks ago on the human machine interface that was launched by Iran. So there's that one. The other one is the PRNI, which is the pre-ransomware notification initiative, which is much more interesting in my perspective, but worse for the folks out there, because when I call you with that one, it means you actually have ransomware actors on your network. And we have computer names, we have all sorts of things. This is the collections that we're getting from tips from a lot of the collaborations we have with some of the biggest companies in the world that are monitoring networks in other places. And when they're seeing US-based entities that have that connection, that C2 beacon connection, they're passing that to us. We don't know who they are, so there's a lot of we get them as tippers, and we pass that to the entity. So it's up to me to go dig and find quickly an organization. It could be pretty much anybody in the critical infrastructure sphere. It could be a school. It could be, again, critical manufacturing. It could be electrical grid. It could be anybody. And as we all know, or I think we all know, the attackers are hitting us on the weekends. And from about 9 o'clock at night to like 7 in the morning is the preponderance of where these attacks are coming from overseas. So sometimes I have to make these phone calls at night and weekends and things like that. But it's all about the betterment of helping out the folks on the back end.
It sounds like a classic kind of like, it sounds like one is more proactive, where you're actually out searching for vulnerabilities and letting people know that they have exposures. The other one sounds more like a classic, when I was in the FBI, like a victim notification, in which you already have a problem and we're going to notify you that you have that problem, right? So
it's exactly what it is. And we do, it's exactly like the victim notification. And to be honest, we do a lot of the victim notification, PRNI stuff with the FBI. So we do joint visits, we do door knocks if we can't get a hold of somebody. We do them with Secret Service. We do them with HSI, the Homeland Security Investigations Unit. I'm sure you dealt with all of them over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, we have about 4 minutes left, and we're getting a lot of questions about reporting. And one question here, and I'm not sure if you can answer it, but we'll give it a try. There was one, it came from Paul Lur. Under the forthcoming rule, CISA is supposed to be the one-stop shop for reporting, but the FBI always directs us to ic3.gov. Which one should people use? Will FBI and CISA be collaborating and coordinating, or will there be some bifurcation left out there?
Yeah. So what it's going to say in the final rule, I don't know. I haven't seen that sort of sausage making, final version of that yet. They haven't even launched that internally, to be honest. So I'm not sure. But what I can tell you is, at least here in New England, and I'm pretty sure it's across most, like Doug Doman on the FBI squad. I know you know Doug. I think he's been on a panel actually coming up right after us, as a matter of fact. So I highly recommend listening to that, because Doug's awesome, and his criminal group ransomware experience up here, we work hand in glove with him on everything. And so he'll tell you, just like I'll tell you, that it doesn't really matter. So whether you report to FBI or CISA, our cell at headquarters, we have an FBI liaison, and they do as well. We're sharing this across. Stuff they find out, we find out down at headquarters, they push to me. Also internally up here in New England, we have a ransomware or a cyber group, task force group, that we're all on anyways, and we're all sharing that. Now, within the guidelines, right? It's all a vetted group, and we're making sure we don't go outside those guidelines. But yeah, we're going to find out either way.
Yeah, I guess so. I know the final rules aren't there, but I do know that there's strong collaboration and information sharing as it is. And my hope that is that you do get to one consolidated reporting location for the federal government that would ultimately be shared, right, between all of the folks in the intelligence community and the regulators that are out there, right? So
yeah, and I'll up channel that as well. I'll make sure I up channel that to headquarters.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, that sounds great. And I guess finally, the last question I have for you, because we are coming up on time, is if does CISA go out, like if a company calls you and asks you to do a cybersecurity briefing, would you go out to visit those companies and give them a threat briefing and some basic, do's and don'ts and blocking and tackling that they could do to make themselves more secure?
Yep, that's exactly what I do. So 90% of my job is, again, resilience work, right? So just think all the things a consultant would do to help you prepare for the bad thing happening. That's what we do. Assessments, workshops. I do a lot with the K through 12 space, helping them understand their risk. Training, pretty much anything you can think of. That's what we do. It's all free. Everything CISA does is free. It's all, well, nothing's free. I guess we're all paying our taxes. Right?
I was going to say.
but after you've paid your taxes, it's no more cost after that. But yeah, it's good. We do all of that.
Fair enough. Well, Joe, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I do think for the audience, CISA is a phenomenal place and resource. And I would highly encourage folks to kind of coordinate with CISA to support their clients and their own companies. So, Bruce, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to chat today.
Jason, thanks so much to you and to Artemis, your cat, for the appearance. And Joe, really appreciate getting the information about CISA and what you guys are doing and what kind of options are available working with you all. So thank you really a great deal for coming in and joining us. Our next panel is in 5 minutes, working with the FBI. We'll be right back.